and Comstor Cloud Quick Hit webinar series. Today we are going to be featuring one of Comstor's cloud service providers, Cisco certified provider, Cirrity, and talking about their hybrid cloud solutions. I am Matt Karst. I am our Senior Director for Westcon Comstor, specifically focused in on our cloud practice throughout North America. I am based out of our Boulder, Colorado office, although today I am participating in this webinar from Austin, Texas, where I am participating in Cisco's distributor forum, where they pull together all of their key distributors, global distributors, to make sure that we're very aligned on all key initiatives and priorities for Cisco. And I've been very pleased over the last couple days to hear a lot about cloud and Cisco's strategy, specifically around continuing to make sure that all of our Cisco partners are winning our fair share of the cloud business that is out in the marketplace. Also joining me today for this webinar is going to be Sean Bates from Cisco. And I believe Sean is, unless he's on the road like myself, he's based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And then, of course, we'll be hearing for a majority of this webinar from the president of one of our cloud Cisco providers, Cirrity, and that is Dan Timko. So let me just jump in and start by talking a little bit about our alignment with Cisco and cloud. And I usually talk about our portfolio for our Cisco resellers in two different categories: Cisco branded and Cisco powered. So Cisco branded are some of the products that you see above the Cisco logo there on the page on the top of this slide. The WebExes, the Spark product, which is a new exciting collaboration product that I've encouraged a lot of our resellers to learn a lot more about Spark. We are transacting that already through Comstor with some of our resellers, so and we know we're going to get a lot of great momentum with Spark. Meraki and Cisco's energy management solution, their security products, including a brand new one called OpenDNS. Which was a recent acquisition and very targeted for the security marketplace. So Cisco branded products, they're owned by Cisco. They're part of the Cisco umbrella of a lot of their new acquisitions. Those are on the top of the list. Those are all in our portfolio, and we encourage our partners every day, if they need to know more information about those, need some training, need some help with and assistance on how to sell, how to quote them. That's what Comstor is here for. Below the line, you'll see three logos there. This is examples of cloud service providers. I call these our CMSP partnerships. Those are partners that have invested typically multi-million dollars to get and host their own solutions that are entirely Cisco powered. They are audited and certified by Cisco and must be maintained and audited by Cisco for that certification. But you have the assurance with these type of solutions that you're getting the Cisco innovation and technology, 24/7 Cisco support behind the scenes with these solutions. Today, we're going to feature one of our companies out of the portfolio named Cirrity. And I love the name because it is a combination of the Cirrus Cloud with security, and you'll hear from Dan Timko later on today about their focus in on and the importance of security. So when you combine security and the Cirrus Cloud, we have Cirrity. And they have 4 different certifications that they have gone through, 3 with Cisco that are very important to all of us: infrastructure as a service, disaster recovery as a service, and desktop as a service. So those 3 are all separate and individual Cisco certifications, and there are not many CMSPs not only in North America, but globally, that can make that claim that they have all 3 of those certifications. And then, of course, they also deliver backup as a service. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sean Bates from Cisco, and Sean's going to talk to you a little bit about what to expect from Cisco in the world of cloud. So Sean, could you take it away?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm really glad that you took the opportunity to join us on this webinar. When I was talking with Matt and Dan and kind of coming to the creation of putting a quick hit webinar out there, one of the things that we came to the conclusion is that, you know, we had an opportunity to deliver kind of a forum for the partner community on Cisco's ever-changing cloud strategy. I know that it's probably no secret that the industry we're in today is rapidly changing, and you have to be able to pivot very quickly, which, you know, Cisco, along with a lot of our partners and a lot of our customers, are doing. So, you know, with that being said, if, you know, we could have a monthly forum to get out to the partner community to kind of give you the latest information from a Cisco perspective, and, you know, from a partner perspective on kind of what we're seeing, and also give you an opportunity to ask questions and feedback on what more you'd like to hear. So one of the things we have coming up right now is Cisco Live. And so the new messaging for, you know, Cisco's FY17, which is rapidly coming up, will be coming out starting that. So if you're attending Cisco Live, I would highly recommend that you go to the Cloud Day, because the person that's going to be speaking there on our strategy going forward is going to be Beery Singh, who's our CTO, and also Kip Compton, who's the Executive VP for Cloud Strategies and Platforms that reports up to Beery. So a lot of exciting things coming up. I don't even know what's going to be released at the Cisco Live. They're keeping a little bit close to the vest on what Cisco's strategy is going forward on this ever-evolving strategy. But, you know, this is the time to start looking at that and looking to Cisco on where we see the industry going and what to expect. You know, and then from these forums that we do on a monthly basis, you know, GSX, which is the sales reps, you know, we'll try and have a little bit of information following that. Then the Partner Summit. So again, if you have things that you would like us to discuss from a Cisco perspective or things that you're curious about, please join us on this WebEx so that we can help make this an opportunity for all of us to learn and get your questions answered. And with that being said, I would really like to introduce Dan so he can kind of go into what hybrid means from a Cisco perspective and how the partner community itself can be engaged to help bring services to our customers. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Sean. So I am Dan Timko, as it says there, President and CTO of Cirrity. We are a cloud service provider and one of the Cisco partners, as mentioned earlier. You know, you could read the slide. This is my background, but really, you know, I thought this was an interesting idea when Matt and Sean both kind of brought it up, the series of quick hit webinars, because I think it's you know, it's A, short, we're not investing a lot of time, and B, we can cover some pretty interesting material. And then, again, as Sean said, there's going to be a lot of updates coming, you know, over the next few months, but really over the next 1 month. So I'm also interested in the next webinar that's happening, because that'll be the first one after Cisco Live, and we all get those updates that are being held so close to the vest. Ryan, you can go ahead and continue here. So again, this one is you know, a really high level 101. You know, don't feel like we're going to come out of here with you know, some bachelor's degree in hybrid cloud or really dive too deep into it. It's really about setting almost a baseline for the conversation, so everyone you know, can kind of talk about, you know, hybrid in general and strategies around using it. A little bit around Cirrity, as it says there. So we started out as a hosting group right before the term cloud really became popular in the vernacular. So we were doing hosting for customers within a larger managed service provider, you know, dating back to the beginning of 2008, and then spun this business out independently in January of 2013 as Cirrity. And Matt gave you a little bit of the genesis of the name there. We have a high concentration of customers in the financial services and healthcare space, so security was always a very big part of what we did, security and compliance, both very important. So we wanted to make sure that was really locked in on the name and in our mission. We are 100% channel only. So hopefully that resonates with the group here, given you're all resellers who work with Comstor. We don't sell anything directly and therefore don't compete with our partners, unlike a lot of people out there. So again, the goal for us is to almost evangelize this as a business and really get these, get partners seeing just, the shift to a recurring revenue model. Not only is it valuable for the business, but it also positions you in a much better way to work with your customers. And then again, Cisco powered, really what that means is you're running on enterprise class gear, and there are not only security controls around, but operational controls, things like ITIL for service management that go into service creation and operation delivery, so that behind the scenes things are taken care of, so that you can trust it as a platform to go out and sell and manage for your partners. All right, Ryan, you can move on here. So again, three big services that are Cisco powered: infrastructure, desktops as a service, and disaster recovery. In disaster recovery, there's really a lot of flavors to that. We deliver that in several different ways, depending on client requirement, technology, that they're using, and then obviously things like recovery time, recovery point, and budget, right? Which is often comes up when we're talking disaster recovery. Just how fast you want to come up, and what that is worth to you as an organization. All right, Ron, you can here. So hybrid cloud, right? So the term hybrid is very loose, which is good and bad, right? So just to set a framework, I put the Gartner definition, right? So a cloud computing service that's composed of some combination of private, public, and community cloud services from different providers. And note that the different providers can include internal IT, right? So that would be considered a service provider. So really, at the end of the day, as most of you probably already know, it just means you're using 2 or more clouds. But in the more common meaning, it's obviously running something in a private cloud environment, and then obviously extending that into the public cloud. Okay, Ryan? So the real question is, why would I use hybrid, right? And what's it good for? And having been working with companies, really for many years around this, we've seen a big shift. I would say in the late 2000s, or I guess not even that early, beginning of this decade, right? There was a big almost marketing push, and the hype curve for cloud was everything is going public. And then I think really over the last few years, there's been a bigger, broader understanding that, well, maybe moving everything offsite isn't really the future, and that's likely not to happen. However, keeping everything on-premise is also probably not the right answer for most organizations. So, really we're coming into a balance point where people are looking at different workloads that may have different requirements, and seeing just, what's really right. Is that something that needs to be run locally? Is that something that would be better put off into a provider-managed cloud? And then obviously how to make the two work together. So just some, real broad examples to kind of get, your mind thinking. But cloud bursting is probably one of the few that come up most often in a lot of cloud use cases, right? Who wants to go out and buy, several million dollars worth of equipment to handle a seasonal workload that you might only need that capacity for a few months? It really doesn't make a lot of financial sense when you have, a workload that's very, very variable to go out and make those capital investments and everything that goes into getting something live when it's a short-term requirement at the end of the day. So cloud bursting is something we see as a big use case for cloud. The security and compliance, and obviously we come at this with a little bit different perspective. In general, when you read a lot about cloud, you're going to hear more around the stories where people kept very sensitive workloads in the private cloud and moved workloads that weren't as sensitive to the public cloud. And that's, you'll read a lot about scenarios like that, which makes sense, given certain providers. In our industry and given our focus, we actually see somewhat of the reverse happen as well, where because of the certifications that we've attained, and just as a highlight, I mean, PCI, we're HIPAA compliant, ISO 27001, and CSA START. So we have a very big compliance management framework and information security program that a lot of customers aren't able to do locally. So it's actually the flip side. What we see from them is they'll look at a workload. They might have several hundred VMs, and maybe a small component of that actually comprise something that either houses payment data or data around cardholders, maybe sensitive healthcare information or personally identifiable information. And so they'll take that small set and move that off with us and keep the rest locally. And what that actually does for them is it de-scopes that local environment from audits, right? Because you've now moved that cardholder data to a provider cloud, a provider who obviously already runs PCI programs, has a certification of the platform, and then services around the environment of the customer in the cloud that makes it a lot easier to obtain the certification. So it's kind of a flip, and so we see both, because there are still organizations that treat things as very sensitive and kind of want to keep it close to the vest. Geographic, another very big reason that you see, the requirement for a hybrid cloud, where you might, your corporate data center might be in one part of the country, you have customers elsewhere, and you want to kind of spread out and put workloads closer to the customers, whether that's something typical to a CDN just for websites, but thinking workload deployments, things like desktops, virtual desktops, and different servers that people are going to be accessing around the country, which it doesn't always make sense to go out and build a new data center or take down private space inside of a co-location facility, deploy capital, and have to manage a data center and infrastructure that's not necessarily where your headquarters is and your IT staff, just to put those that workload there. So we see that as a big reason. And then kind of one of the big ones, and obviously around the whole DR as a service, is disaster recovery. It's mainly, at the end of the day, it's a big insurance policy, and a lot of organizations really struggle to write a check to keep a cold site up to spec of what it really does need to be in order to take over in a disaster scenario. And so what we see now is obviously a lot of people looking at replication strategies to providers like us and others, where we can ingest all that data and maintain quick RTOs. And it's a fraction, obviously, of the cost of standing up a secondary data center, buying all the software to deal with replication, and having to manage tests at that secondary site as well, all things that we can kind of roll into a service. So, all big areas that we see around hybrid. Another one that's not kind of mentioned here on the slide is around the virtual desktops. As I mentioned earlier, we have several organizations who do work internationally or have contractors and employees that are international, but have data that's sensitive and really should stay within the U.S. And so they're leveraging our desktop as a service as a kind of a jump site to allow some of these international employees to come into the U.S. And work with the data, but not necessarily have local control or the ability to copy things like that. So, but yet still have ties back to corporate data centers where maybe some data lives. So those are all really use cases. And again, like I said, because the definition of hybrid cloud is really so varied and so wide open, you're really going to see a lot of different use cases. And coming as an infrastructure provider, this is kind of how I see it. But just as much hybrid is when you think about integrating SaaS applications back into local. So for those customers, using something like a Salesforce for CRM and integrating that back to local accounting databases or local business platforms, that's just as much of a hybrid cloud as anything else. So really, again, wide definition, so it leads to a lot of leeway there. All right, Ryan, you can go to the next slide here. So a big question, and this is something we hope to hear more about over the next month, right? How does it all work together? And really the key thing to note is that top bullet point, where this is where we're seeing a lot of investment in the technology, because I will tell you right now, it's not even close to perfect. There are cloud management platforms out there that will manage workloads in multiple sites and do some things well, but really it's not the full picture. And so we're seeing a lot of improvements in platforms like this. Last year Cisco, or I guess it was at Partner Summit, announced the Clicker acquisition. So we're interested to hear what's kind of happening with that. And then as well as, we've been a partner around InterCloud and InterCloud Director, and the ability to launch workloads from a private site into a Cisco InterCloud partner, which we are. So that's part of the picture as well. And but then at the end of the day, there's so much more to be built on to extend things like security policies, network communication, things along those lines. And so, one of the things you'll find at the end of the day is interconnectivity is very critical to success of a hybrid cloud. And if you're putting things in multiple places, they obviously need to be able to talk to each other, and that needs to happen, at a bandwidth that's sufficient for the workloads that are going across those, and also, with the assurance that the security is there if you're putting somewhere, if you're putting a workload on an offsite provider center, and then that workload has to talk back to sensitive databases. You want to make sure that's secure and happens at a fast enough speed so as not to impact the usage from the users. Really the other thing is the ability to move around and expand, because again, that's one of the benefits of a provider cloud is the elasticity. So you want the ability to move workloads into the cloud when you need that extra computing power, bring them back maybe when you don't, and then expand out nodes within that just to improve your, really improve the end result. And then, portability is really critical, because at the end of the day, we have multiple technologies around hypervisors, right? So, you've got obviously VMware, you've got Microsoft, and you've got OpenStack, and then Zen, a few others that are a little smaller. But you've got three big players that are entirely different formats, and so it's critical that you're looking at, if you want to move a workload from one place to the other, are you looking at moving the VM? Is it essentially a long distance vMotion where the whole thing moves, or are you bringing up a VM elsewhere that has the application, and it doesn't matter if it's Hyper-V locally and VMware in the cloud, because at the end of the day, they're both running a Windows OS with SQL, and that's doing the communication across. So that's a big thing, because if you're doing image management, in your private cloud, and you want to use those same images to deploy in a public cloud, the question is, can you do that, right? You can't take a VMware image and deploy that in a Hyper-V cloud without other third-party technologies in the middle to do that conversion. So that's something to think about when you're looking at expanding into a hybrid cloud and a hybrid cloud use case. All right, Ryan, there we go. And so this is something, the challenges to success with hybrid cloud, because people can jump into it a little bit and not think through kind of everything. And as I mentioned before, right, interconnectivity is a big deal, but that's really a big deal because of dependencies, which is the first thing. Doing an assessment of the environment that you're planning to move is really critical when you look at splitting things, right? If you're taking an entire workload and moving it somewhere else, it's, I would say, less risky. But if you're taking part of a workload and moving it, then you have to make sure you fully mapped the dependencies between those servers. Are you considering things like how the authentication framework and where does Active Directory live? People find out a little too late that, yeah, that database server really did matter, and it's calling that, more often than you thought. So there are tools and processes around this that really make, it's a little more upfront work in terms of doing the evaluation and assessment, but improves, the likelihood of success. And really the bigger the bigger the project, right, the more complex,
Nope.
the more important. Someone there? Oh. All right, so that's, you know, kind of one thing we like to bring up when working with a new partner or bringing on a new customer, to make sure, you know, if it is a hybrid scenario, you know, do we understand the environment of the customer and what's coming and what are the challenges? Because at the end of the day, no one wants to move half a workload and find out too late that you had dependencies and the project becomes a massive failure, because then everyone gets a sour taste and, you know, and you have a project failure, which is no good for anyone. So very key. And then, you know, again, right now management platforms, they're really not there yet. They're getting better, but right, there's still a lot of manual work. There's customization. There's things you have to do, let's say, out of that single pane of glass to pull it all together. And so, you know, that's an area that we're looking for a lot more investment of the technology side to improve that. Complexity, right? Kind of mentioned that earlier, as you add sites and you know, providers, because again, it can be more than one public cloud provider or hosted provider. So as you're adding multiple sites and interconnecting them and deciding where to place workloads, right, you're obviously increasing the complexity, which at the end of the day is another challenge. And then one of the biggest ones that we see, it's kind of interesting, it's depending on the customer or the partner, this is either one of the more critical ones at the front side of the conversation, or it's almost a last thought. And that's around governance and security policies. So who's looking at that overall environment and looking at things like data flows and where's the data resting, and you know, does this meet our corporate policies around information security, and do any of those policies need to be revised or updated and have management approval to be able to do something like this, or do we need to look at additional technologies, things like encryption, where key management may be done, you know, locally instead of in the cloud, as a way to, you know, to kind of meet those requirements. So we see governance as a really important thing to consider when you're looking at an overall hybrid cloud, and obviously it's going to be something that, you know, for some organizations is far more important than others. All right, Ryan, you can move on. And then again, right, so that feeds right into security, which is a really important thing, right, for anyone to look at as you take your data and put it on someone else's service. And what we find is, again, due diligence and evaluation of the provider is really critical to do very early on in the process, because you don't want to obviously waste a lot of time and take up your runway on the project by coming up with a solution at the end, you know, when you're several months into it, finding out that maybe that provider's security management practice isn't all, you know, you thought it was, or maybe even in some cases assumed it was. Because as we find, a lot of people make assumptions about, you know, cloud providers or any provider in general that aren't always true, in terms of considering some certifications as almost par for the course, and then finding out a little too late that maybe that provider doesn't have that certification, or you know, the marketing on the website maybe misleads a little bit, and it's not you know, entirely the case. And so we see that sometimes with people coming last minute. Right, we talked at length earlier about data governance, right? Just what data will be stored or transmitted, and how are you managing that appropriately for the customer, and you know, putting that in a framework that works for them. You know, what assurances do you have of the qualifications? This goes right into the diligence, which is, you know, an important step to do anytime you work with a provider. You know, you want to see things like attestations and audit reports and you know, certifications, right? Because any certification or any provider that you're looking at is going to have an audit report or an auditor opinion letter, or all those things. And the one piece of advice I would give you when looking at a cloud provider is to make sure the name on that certificate is the company you're doing business with, because far too often in this world we see providers that are obviously housed in a third-party data center advertising certifications that are actually held by the physical facility, and therefore the scope of the certification is really only around the physical security and does not extend into the cloud services. So make sure the provider you're looking at, their certifications that are on their website are actually certifications that are done in their name and fully cover the services that you're buying, and not just the physical, right? And then encryption is something that always comes up, right? It's kind of very important. There's a range from encrypting right at the storage to encrypting within applications and within virtual machines where key management is done locally. And obviously there's not encrypting at all, and really it's a conversation with the customer going back to what data is stored. Are there legal or regulatory requirements for any technologies? Is there corporate security requirements that mandate encryption for confidential data, and how does key management matter there? And so you have a range of options when looking at encryption. When you're placing data at a provider like us. And you want to know which one is, which one's right for that customer. So Ryan, you can move on from here. So the key, right, is to note that hybrid cloud it can provide immense value to organizations when used appropriately and for the right reasons. And again, it's given the fact that it's such a wide definition and covers so many things. Right, there's a ton of use cases, and hopefully some of you right now are thinking about some of your customers and some workloads where this may make sense, and of course maybe you're finding others that don't. And then really the key is, if you're familiar with the Deming cycle, plan comes before do, because the key to success when you're looking at a hybrid cloud scenario is really in the planning process and understanding those dependencies and just what you're moving and what you're not moving, and how the two will continue to interact once they're in separate places. So definitely want to leave that as a note to make sure that process is done right, because as a provider, we're obviously we have a lot vested in our partners and customers having a successful journey to the cloud, and so the planning process is very important. So I think at this point we will move it to Q&A. Ryan, if you want to, and then kind of open it up for questions.
Hi, everyone. We can, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them either in the chat window directly to the host or the panelists, or you can do it in the Q&A box. Howard, man, has anyone seen anything? Have you guys seen anything come in?
Yeah, Ryan, I have one that just came in. The question is, where are Cirrity's data centers located?
So we are a U.S.-based provider. We have data centers on East and West Coast right now in Atlanta and Phoenix.
Great. Thank you, Dan. One more just came in. If I sell Cirrity's cloud solutions, does my Cisco rep get paid, or do they get quarter retirement?
Matt, you want to talk about the VIP process and everything that goes in with Cisco, or Sean maybe?
Yeah, I could answer that.
But yeah, Sean can probably.
So yeah, the answer is yes. There's a process in place today that the Cisco AM gets paid, and the reselling partner earns VIP. I mean, which is a rebate process that Cisco has in place. I mean, we're at the end of our fiscal year, so programs always change. So we don't know what FY17 is holds, so nobody knows. But at this point, the Cisco AM does get paid, and there is VIP for rebates for partners. And when the Cisco fiscal year ends and the next one comes up, there'll be some adjustments to the programs, and we'll figure out what those are when that happens.
Great. Thanks, Sean. That you covered both of the questions. I had one more, and that's been covered there. So that's all that I have for right now.
All right. I've got, this is Matt. I've got another question that came in that I'll start the answer with, and Howard, you might want to fill in any more color. But the question is all around how to get started. So the question is, I am already a Cisco cloud service reseller and have registered as such on the Cisco site, but had selected and have been partnering with another provider. Can I double up, or what are next steps really to get to be able to resell Cirrity? So Howard, do you want to, since you deal with this on almost a daily basis with our partner base, do you want to kind of talk about the ease and how we're trying to make it easy for partners to get started?
Yeah, I can handle that, Matt. Thank you. So basically, all you need to do is to reach out to me, or you can really easily reach out to any one of us in the cloud practice, which is just sending an email to cloud@comstor.com, or you can call me directly at 303-566-2660, and I'll get you started in that direction. It's fairly quickly. Once you've already signed up with one of our other providers, it's really easy to get aligned and get going with Cirrity. Essentially, there's just one quick agreement that needs to be accepted and reviewed and accepted, and from that, then we'll start the whole entire enablement and training process, which is fairly quickly. And once you get that, you know, we really get you engaged with the Cirrity team. They have a great program that they walk you through and really help you to identify not only opportunities, but also work with them and work with us in lead generation campaigns or any kind of marketing support that you need. Matt, is that good for you?
Yeah, thank you. So this question, and I'm going to kind of wrap it up on this one unless we get other questions come in the interim. This is a question I'm going to kind of pose to Dan, because Dan has a base of reselling partners that he had been doing business with directly, and again, he mentioned they only go through partners to resell the service to the end user. And he had a base of some partners prior to us getting introduced. It's Dan been what, at least two and a half, 3 years ago, and you started, and then we formed our partnership with Comstor, so we could help you get introduced to even more resellers. But of the base of partners that you see out there, you've probably seen some that are, you know, say, yeah, I want to get into and have a Cisco provided IaaS or DRaaS service, but they haven't seen a lot of success yet. And then I know you've had some partners that we have experienced great success with, that you're very pleased with the volume and their win rate. So my question, Dan, is what's the differentiator, like maybe one or two differentiators on what you see that reselling partner do that's separating them from those that are, you know, experiencing a return, an investment in their cloud practice versus those that just yet are still struggling a little bit?
Yeah, I would say really the number one thing is commitment. You know, really we see some resellers who end up just signing up to check a box and maybe have cloud services, and they don't really bring it up with customers unless, you know, maybe the customer asks about it, and even then they might try to redirect them to a hardware sale before they you know kind of give in. And then we see other partners that really make a point to bring cloud up in the conversation with their customers, and talk about, you know, obviously the different use cases and ways to be successful with it. And really those are the partners that we're seeing success out of, right? Because obviously you have to, you know, take the message to the customer to be successful. And what we've found is, you know, it's almost the cliche, the term, right? If you're not talking cloud to your customer, someone else is. And we've seen that play out in real life where, you know, people try to keep moving the old way, and obviously it's going to work in a lot of cases, but every once in a while you're going to find a customer that moved on, and then once you find out why, you know, it might be because someone else came in with a little bit more of a unique solution that maybe didn't involve them spending a whole bunch of money up front and just continuing to do things, you know, as usual. So I think that's the important part. At the end of the day, really it comes down to what's best for the customer. If what's best for the customer really is, putting some hardware in and doing that, then hey, that's fine. But in a lot of cases, a hybrid solution where they're, doing some locally and some offsite, or even in some cases where the customer just makes sense to put everything offsite. Really the key is you have to be armed with kind of both, and that's why I think a lot of the Cisco resellers are in a unique position because you have both options. You have the option of selling local and delivering pro services to that, and you have the option of delivering cloud and the pro services around that, and then obviously the combination of doing both at the balance that's right for the customer. And it's the partners that take that to heart and kind of bring it up early in the conversation, those are the partners that are successful selling cloud. And I think ultimately will be more successful in the long run overall, because you don't have to look very hard to see, growth in cloud spending. Right, it keeps going up, and hardware revenues probably not going to go up at the same pace. So for your business to grow at the pace that you want it to grow, right, you really need to have both arrows in your quiver, to be successful. That's how we look at it.
Yep. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. There's just one last question there, Matt, if I can get that teed up to everybody. Question
Sure.
comes in, is there a cost in becoming a reseller? And
there is, you know what, I'm going to answer that first, Matt, from Comstor's viewpoint, and then I'm going to let Dan maybe add final color. There is no cost that we charge a partner to go through any of our registration, our enablement, some of the training that you're going to want your sales and your technical folks to take. We have streamlined a lot of that, but no, we don't have a fee or a charge for that. And we don't even put commitments out in front of our resellers saying, if you want to become a reseller, you have to hit X number of gigabytes or disaster recovery deals closed within your first 12 months. We know this is a journey, and all of our partners, we're walking them through this journey together, and some are taking small steps. Some have just, as Dan mentioned, they're all in, they're committed, and they're going strong. Dan, you want to add any color to that?
Yeah, so we don't have a fee or any cost to become a reseller, and we don't have any hard commitments in terms of revenue numbers, to maintain. We do, however, want to see that you are committed, right? It's a conversation we have early because we invest a lot of time really in helping build the business practice. So we want to see the partners are serious, and but
yep.
There's no cost to sign up.
Yep. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Howard, any others come in?
No, that's all I see right now.
Okay. All right, let's wrap it up. Last slide, if you could advance to the last slide here. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that if you are interested in getting started, we tried to make it real easy. It's an easy email address. Just send us a quick note at cloud@comstor.com, or you can call the number there on the screen. I will make sure that all attendees of this, if we have captured emails, we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of today's slides that you saw earlier. So, and you'll have this number there on the back end of that. We're also going to have some additional Comstor Quick Hit webinars coming up. The next one's scheduled for Wednesday, July 20th at 1 o'clock, so same time as today's webinar. So be on the lookout for your invitation to that. And the topic's going to be moving applications to the cloud. We're very open to making sure that we're covering some of these quick hit webinar topics with things that are important and on your mind that you would see value in. So we would encourage you, whether you call or you send us, again, a note to that cloud@comstor.com, if you've got an idea or two of what you'd like to see one of our topics for a webinar be, please send them to us, and we'll certainly do our best to make sure that that gets integrated in. So thanks for your time today. Looks like we wrapped give everybody back 15 minutes of your week, and thank you again for your participation.